Goldman Sachs, who is now entering the "wouldn't a little death be such a bad thing" phase of the coronavirus pandemic. He's came out with this amazing tweet last night. By the way, this is a guy whose bio literally says he's a CEO on a gap year, or a former CEO on a gap year, saying, quote, "Extreme measures to flatten the virus curve is sensible for a time to stretch out the strain on health infrastructure, but crushing the economy, jobs, and morale is also a health issue and beyond. Within a very few weeks, let those with a lower disease risk return to work." So not a very cogent tweet there from Lloyd Blankfein, former CEO of Goldman Sachs. Not to mention the fact that the tweet was also really evil in every way. Jack Merkinson calls him a golfing buddy of Satan, doing some Sunday night brainstorming. So this point of view is shared among other people, the President of the United States, who spent the last 14 or so hours feverishly signaling that he's getting tired of telling people that he wants to keep them safe and wants to tell them to start going back to work pretty soon, saying, quote, "We cannot let the cure be worse than the problem itself. At the end of the 15-day period, we will make a decision as to which way we want to go," which, the way I understand it, things really, I mean, if the period began the 12th, it should be up by the end of this week, which is really chilling. Daniel Dale reports that Fox News host Steve Hilton said last night, "You know the famous phrase, 'the cure is worse than the disease'? That's the exact territory we are hurtling towards." Trump later last night said, whatever. Okay, so Trump, getting more explicit, has now retweeted posts calling for everyone outside high-risk groups to go back to work in early April to avoid economic damage. Back and forth. The White House has been also saying similar things to reporters both publicly and privately. Larry Kudlow on Fox News said, "The president is right. The cure can't be worse than the disease. We are going to have to make some difficult trade-offs." Yeah, there's really more and more of this bubbling up, and we're really entering the guess some people gotta die, oh well, sorry about that, guys, stage of capitalism. And it's like, who the hell do you think is going to be put in this situation? It's going to be the most vulnerable, the most low income, and the worst protected people. We're not going to see Donald Trump. Definitely not going to see Lloyd Blankfein going back to work. He's not even doing a job. He's a billionaire CEO on a gap year, and he has the nerve to tell people, get back to work, guys. Come on, get back to work. It's for the economy. Expose yourself to a lethal pathogen for the economy so we can make the stocks go up. Woohoo! Like, for example, Buck Sexton, one of the growing group of conservatives, along with Max Boot and others whose names sound like they are gay porn star names, but says America is going to have to go back to work very soon, even if that means there are more casualties from COVID-19 than would occur under this continued extreme shutdown. It's a very hard thing to say, but it's a reality, and we should accept and act on it. Jesse Kelly, DC, host of The First, says, "I gotta be honest, I'm weirded out by this whole thing. Is there another time in history where a country purposely destroyed its own economy? I'm not talking about mistakes or bad policies or war. I'm talking about purposely pointing at its citizens and barring them from work. I wonder why they could be doing it. Maybe it's just to save their lives and to save your life and to save the lives of your grandparents. Like, oh, it's scary because these are the people who are in control of our government right now. Like, they could very easily, for the sake of the market, say, you know what? There is nothing we can do. Our economy will be destroyed if we don't send the most vulnerable people back to work and risk getting them infected with this virus. There is absolutely nothing we can do. There's nothing, for example, say like a relief package that we could possibly pass, or a push or a drive in some shape or form to get people, get money in their hands, permanent paid sick leave, get the, with an extra $2,000 a month, moratorium on rent, cost of living expenses stopped in the best way possible. Like, there's no possible, those solutions that are being screamed from the left, I shouldn't say Democrats really, but screamed from the left, those solutions do not exist. They're not possible. We will not hear them. They're acting like these ideas just do not exist. It's very, very scary because these are the people that have the presence here, and these are some of the most powerful people with a lot of influencing it. I'm not talking about Buck Sexton, but I'm talking about Lloyd Blankfein. I'm talking about people, Larry Kudlow, for example. These are people that would easily lift these restrictions and really try and push people back to work. And that is very, very scary. And they can manipulate. They have the ability to at least attempt to go up to people like Dr. Anthony Fauci and the CDC to go and say, you need to lift these restrictions. You need to come out and tell people that it's okay to go back to work. Why? Because the market will be bad. There has to be that play happening. Like, you need to do that, even when it's explicitly not safe to do so. So we are really seeing something like that happen here, and it's incredibly scary. It's super, super scary to think that we could push these people to an early grave, if you think about it, and all for the sake of the markets. And that is, like, I understand completely need to have like the markets running and economy running, but it's not so much that we need to have money flowing through the stock market. It's the fact that people need to be fed. People need to be able to keep the roofs over their heads. People need to survive during this crisis. It's not the most important priority. Should not be the stock market. It should be making sure that our people in this country are safe, and we do not do that by just like blindly infusing money in the markets by pushing people to go back to work, because there is a clear demonstrated way to do it. There's a clear demonstrated way that we can ensure the viability, for example, per se, like of the American public, and that's by putting money in their pockets. It's by moratorium on rent, paid sick leave, guaranteed across not just the Nancy Pelosi way, not just 20% of the American people, but 100% of the American people, and send them $2,000 a month in universal basic income through the duration of the crisis. That is how you do it, by not killing people. Like, there is a very, very clear way to come in and say, not clear people. It's very, very simple. GOP senators, White House advisors are urging an easing of restrictions because of the economic impact. More than 30,000 U.S. have already tested positive. Public health officials say we need more restrictions, not fewer. It is very, very disturbing to see this happening. This kind of debate will surely ramp up as the hardships of isolation and social distancing go on. More and more people will start to wonder whether all this misery is really worth it when people who get the coronavirus will be all right in the end. Aside from the fact that letting potentially millions of people die when they don't have to is, extremely immoral, and there's powerful evidence that easing restrictions too soon is a really, really bad idea. For example, Hong Kong, look what happened in Hong Kong. Only a week ago, Hong Kong seemed like a model for how to contain the novel virus with a relatively small number of cases despite months of being on the front lines of the outbreak. That was because of action taken early on. They let their guard down and cases soared up. It doubled in the past week, with many imported from overseas as Hong Kong residents who had left either to work or study abroad or to seek safety when the city seemed destined for a major outbreak earlier this year. They brought the virus back, and now they really got hammered. They got caught with their pants down, is really what happened. So, in the idea that this is such a devil's bargain would really actually save the economy is based on some very dubious assumptions. It pays to note the dichotomy that's being set up here. Either you destroy jobs forever and the economy is toast, or you keep the restrictions that are needed to save most lives in place. There is, of course, another way, as I'm talking about here. This is Jack Murchison. The government could pay people salaries so they don't have to lose their jobs and their employers didn't have to face financial ruin. It could suspend rent so that people were secure in their homes. It could, in short, keep the economy afloat and protect people so they can participate in the economy when we get through this. That's before you get to other things it should be doing, like letting tons of people out of jail for just the health and safety of our prison population, because again, there are people too. Like, just ask Harvey Weinstein. No, I'm kidding. But it is the really scary situations, because it's like, what is, like, are we really screwed? Like, this is not outlandish stuff. A string of European countries are already doing things like this. I mean, heaven forbid we do the same thing here, rather than muse aloud about how much death we were prepared to accept in order for some rich people's lives to go on. Because it seems like what's going on here is just blatantly trying to infuse money into the stock market, make the arrow turn green on the Dow Jones, hooray. But, like, that could come at the cost of 6 million plus lives. Is that a trade-off we really want to make here? Like, is that a trade-off we really want to make? So since we're all in social isolation here, I decided to bring my dad in to talk about this. I've been following the economy very, very closely, because that is part of your job description. So, have you heard a lot about this proposal that you see Donald Trump doing, like the idea of the cure possibly becoming worse than the disease itself?
I have, and I have some degree of intellectual sympathy towards the argument, but, you have to understand that it really is choosing between the lesser of two very evil evils. One is not having a economy to come back to, and the other is having a very uncomfortable amount of casualties.
6 million plus, possibly. At least.
But if you think about it in a real world, what could really happen if the government said, okay, let's try to go back to business as usual. Go get your hair cut. Go have dinner in a restaurant. And what would really happen?
But, I mean, tell me how that's not a false dichotomy, though. Like, we have a list of just public health officials.
That it won't happen.
What?
So
loosening of
if
restrictions?
you ever have the time to restart the economy, if you ever say, okay, everybody go fly, stay in hotels, go to restaurants.
Just go back to life as normal.
Go back to life as normal. Or maybe go back to life as normal but take precautions. The economic impact even then is going to be enormous.
In the positive. But what we have heard is, like, I don't know if you could just say, oh, well, take precautions. Like, I don't know if that's very effective, because I think what it does is it creates a completely false dichotomy between just destroying the economy and keeping people safe, keeping people alive. And it doesn't, like, we shouldn't just say dying. Like, if you die, obviously that's really, really bad, but the coronavirus can really hurt you pretty, pretty bad without killing you. So you could have a pretty bad dose of it, per se, and survive it. But, I mean, couldn't you say through government relief efforts, for example, paying people some sort of universal basic income, sick leave, and some sort of moratorium on rent, getting rid of cost of living expenses, things that European countries are doing and countries are doing all across the world. Like, no one else is having this discussion of should we expose all these people to such a dangerous situation. I think there's definitely ways around this that these people are just
aren't they having that discussion though? Because if you look at Britain just now shutting the pubs, shutting the restaurants, they really push back against this, and I'm empathetic. I don't know when the right time is. If you figure there's a seesaw, teeter-totter, whatever you'd call it, and on one end is economic health and the other end is casualties, and how do you find the right balance? Maybe that analogy is a little bit tortured, but I mean,
I don't know. I really don't. I do not like I don't think that's the right way to go. Like, tell me why we can't avert this problem. Why can't we just put a chainsaw through the seesaw, to use your analogy?
Okay.
And